Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar in association with Inawisdom, entitled AI, a Driving Force for the Future of Insurance. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Scott, and I'm the editor of Insurance Times. I'll be chairing the session today. So I'd like to start by introducing my expert panelists here with me. So we have Samir Deshapande, Group Head of Enterprise Architecture at PIB Group, Andy Fairchild, who is Insurance Advisor and Non-Executive Director, and Alex Molinero, Insurance Lead for Inawisdom. So thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
So yeah, to kick things off, let's begin with a bit of a starting benchmark. So can you each share how AI is predominantly being used in the insurance market today, and where you feel there are currently missed opportunities or areas where AI is perhaps being underutilized? So Andy, should we kick off with you first?
Yeah, I think, I would start here by focusing on, the fundamentals of our industry, which is all about risk selection, the terms that an underwriter would put on that risk selection, and the price that they will put on it. So, those right back to the fundamentals of accepting the risk, on what basis and for what price. And machine learning and AI is, has the potential to really kind of revolutionize what we do there and what we have been doing there. But as we go through today, I think there's an important angle to it for us and for the broking community, which is about how we collate that data in the first place by staying close to the customer, how much value we put on that data, and then once we've got that sorted, then it's about how we can use and manipulate that data in a better way to get better price acceptance and better risk acceptance and better pricing. So, I think it's, right at the fundamentals of what we've all known and loved in our industry. And we've got to be very cognizant of the end customer and the broker distribution as we collate that data before we get, too focused on kind of how we're going to use it, really.
No, great. And Samir, do you want to throw your weight in this one as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd just like to add what Andy said, actually, that, in the broking business, if we focus on the actual end-to-end journey of a customer and the end-to-end journey of the policy, then quite often as you go through within your organization, each organization is different at different levels of maturity. So as you go through right from customer acquisition, how you are acquiring the customer, how you are supporting the customer, and right down to your relationship with the insurers, as Andy mentioned about pricing, price optimization, rating, to understanding more about the customer needs, claims, etc. So I think fundamentally, if you look at the end-to-end journey, understand what your current pain points are, and each organization at different levels of maturity, then quite often as you go through that, you realize that the areas in which you can actually make a big difference using AI and machine learning technologies, and that would just help you to actually sort of take you to that digital path that everybody in the insurance industry at the moment is, as you know, is behind the curve from the other industries in terms of the way we deal with the customers or we manage the process. So yeah, it's there are a number of opportunities we can utilize using AI and machine learning in this process.
Oh, great. Alex, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think that the industry is evolving pretty rapidly, and for example, the COVID-19 pandemic period has in fact on those organizations, all industries, but as well in the insurance industry, because basically all companies had to work remotely, and consequence of that they had to kind of increase their digital capabilities, where eventually makes that those companies now post-pandemic, eventually this pandemic is behind us for sure, but those companies are now more ready to adopt AI/ML because they've kind of increased their digital capability. Having said that, and even though we've got lots of insurtech just disrupting the industry, I mean, we have to acknowledge that the industry remains still very document heavy. So if you think about the machine learning adoption, yes, there's a lot of things about credit risk scoring, and I fully agree with Andy when he says that it's all about risk selections and risk appetite and putting a price against the risk for premiums. At the same time, on the document side of it, it's a lot of documents. So we've got an industry that is facing with more and more data, more and more documents and unstructured documents. So data is a source of opportunity for growth for those companies. At the same time, too many data brings additional complexity because you need to see how this data will be accessed, stored, processed, and used and consumed for those companies. So data is an opportunity, and at the same time can be a burden. So there's a data component if you think about AI ML adoption. But yeah, I would say that we can start seeing some interesting adoption with in the past years more supervised model, like traditional risk scoring type of use cases. And now we see more and more unstructured data use cases with document processing, image recognition, etc. Because we also need to acknowledge that the technology has evolved and improved over the last years that makes things possible now that were not possible 2 or 3 years ago.
That's really interesting that you mentioned about the opportunities and challenges there, because that's something I wanted to pick up on in my next question about the current challenges really being faced by the insurance industry when it comes to modernisation, and where AI and machine learning can really sort of help in these specific areas. I don't know if Samir, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about, as I mentioned before, if you think about the sort of the value chain or the end-to-end process that we go through from right from customer acquisition to sort of interactions with the insurers, there are a number of areas where we are still heavily, as Alex mentioned, we're still heavily reliant on manual processes, documents. We're still behind the curve. There are scenarios where the way we interact with our customers is really age old. Like, for instance, we are still very much dependent on call center kind of operations, when it comes to interacting with the customer. That needs to change rapidly with what's happening with the rest of the industries. For example, the other industries are very much moving away from the traditional contact center to, the call center to a much wider contact center sort of channels, if you like. So that's one of the things that we could do. We could, and we are in PIB also in the process of actually implementing this. We have got multi-channel based contact center system where we use AI machine learning techniques like the chatbots, for example. Chatbots can help to sort of interact with the customers. And you don't need to have a traditional model where you don't have to have an army of people sitting behind the scenes to answer some of the very basic questions related to a policy, for instance. So yeah, I mean, the contact center is an interesting one because it has got chatbot sort of an element. It has also got speech analytics embedded in it, so it can actually sort of identify and understand what the customer is trying to say, and therefore redirect the customer to the right teams using the modern AI speech analytics techniques. What it can also do is, or it can also, once understood about what the customer interactions are, it can help you to analyze what the customers are saying. So, traditionally you would go behind the scenes and listen to the recordings, understand what the problems were, and then sort of help to teach the staff or the customer-facing agents about what needs to be done. But now it can all be done through AI machine learning because all these models are built into the contact center platforms. You can actually do the speech analytics, understand the patterns, understand sort of do the sentiment analysis based on what the customer is saying. And that can massively improve the service that we offer to the customer, whether it is an advice sale or a non-advice sale in the insurance world. So these things are being used by the other industries, and we only just started to use that in insurance. So it's a massive opportunity in doing that. As Alex mentioned, the number of areas we can use modern techniques like intelligent document processing, where it comes a lot of documents are being exchanged between the customers and the insurers, and we still traditionally, especially in terms of when it comes to manual trades, I mean, if it's an e-trade, then it's much more easier. But when it comes to manual trade, where it's complex risk that has been underwritten. Yeah, there's a lot of emails going back and forth and documents going back and forth. So there's a need to extract information out of these emails, unstructured data, structured data, and process it. So it's also been used. What we also thinking of doing it, and are in the process of doing, is the whole customer onboarding process, the whole KYC element using AI machine learning. So when it comes to identity verification, you can, you've got apps and you've got technology in place where you can verify the individuals and the documents associated with it, like passports and licenses, make sure they're all genuine, to make sure that the risk down the line is much more lower. So there's plethora of AI machine learning tools out there in the market, which you just have to sort of understand and identify where can you use to sort of remove your pain points. And then there's the other element of building your own AI machine learning capability to take it to the next level. But often you don't have to start there, because people do think about AI machine learning as, oh my God, I need to have an army of scientists, data scientists and machine learning experts to start using it. Not necessarily the case. It's just become much more commoditized now.
That's some really interesting points there, Samir. Andy, I can see you nodding away there.
Yeah. There's some great points in there. The vision that we've got here around the customer interaction through a contact center or from online, very typical in personal lines, in high volume, low complexity products. Add to that, the more kind of advice-led proposition that a broker would deliver. At the heart of all of those is how can we almost show to customers that we value collecting their data more than we currently do. Collecting customer data for the provision of an insurance product is not something that I think people get up and kind of find a load of joy in. But we must, as an industry, I think we must show customers how important that data is and how important that data collection proposition is. We've been talking here about contact centers online, something much more intimate with a broker, sort of advice-led, when you're talking about more complex personal lines and commercial lines covers. But at the heart of all of those is valuing that customer data. Now, we can get that customer data from a person-to-person interaction, or increasingly from a person-to-machine interaction, and therein lies a big move for the industry, because we've got more information, because we've got more data on which to base risk selection and pricing decisions. But my sort of fundamental thought at the heart of that is, how can we show end customers that we value their information and their data a little more, and take it away from being a trudge process into something that they value, and that we can put more and more effort into kind of collecting that data via machines in a much more sophisticated way, which in turn will lead to better risk selection, better pricing, and a better end customer experience.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Alex, would you like to add something?
I think that on the challenges, I think both Samir and Andy just have bringing to life all the art of the possible in use cases. So there's a lot of potential, right? But very often the question we've got from clients is, okay, but where do I start from? Because there's so much potential. Where do I start? So for example, at Inawisdom, we've got those customers early stage in the journey that maybe have started consuming AIML, buying products, embedding AIML, but they want to start looking into a use case internally. And so, for example, we would do like a opportunity scoring matrix approach, where you look into use cases and you want to look into feasibility and the complexity for delivering that use cases against a business impact. And I think it's really important that we keep in mind all the time that AML should be the key enabler to solve business problems and drive business benefits for our clients. Because sometimes I've seen clients just wanted to do some interesting use cases, but there was no business value behind it. So you still need to keep in mind what's the business benefit for each and every use case you want to do. In some case, we've had clients willing to do a use case and we say, yeah, it's feasible, we can do it. But where's the value? If you want to do like a proof of concept and prove the value and then invest or productionize such solution, where you need to have a business case. So it's really important to guide our clients in terms of where to start, picking the low-hanging fruits where you're going to find the lowest complexity with the highest business impact, because this also will set the pace for adoption. Because if you want them to drive and scale this and help these clients become more data-driven, if you start and failing with the first use case, you're gonna have a problem getting buy-in internally, and you're gonna impact adoption. So adoption is key, and one of the key challenges to make sure you pick the right use cases. So that's where you start from. Then there's another question about I'm hearing commoditized, and as a machine learning specialist company helping clients implementing machine learning solution, I'm kind of tempted to challenge a little bit this. There's a question about commoditized and how easy it is to use and use machine learning technology. So technology is becoming more and more accessible. You've got now open sources, you've got ML pre-built models that you can use and that you can build and run prediction with. Now, what happens is that in the second type of situation we can see with our clients is that clients starting using machine learning, they're running proof of concept, proof of value, but they're struggling moving to production because it's easy to run a prediction. It's far less easy to have a machine learning solution running in production and delivering on the day-to-day basis insights and business outcome for your customers. So very often we're helping clients moving from POC to kind of MVP and production grade. And I think that we need to acknowledge that it's not only about data science, you need a full skill mix to be able to deliver successfully those solutions. You've got the data components, you need data engineers, you need cloud architect, you need data scientist, you need business analyst. So there's a skill mix that you need to have, internal or external, to be successful with that. And in terms of commoditized, then there's an important question that those clients are asking themselves. Do I need to buy this solution? Is it a commodity for me, or is it a strategic asset that I want to build internally to drive my business forward and get competitive advantage against the market? That's where you're going to have the kind of the build versus buy kind of discussion that we all very often having with our customers.
No, it's really interesting. I just want to sort of circle back to talk a bit more about the adoption side, because I think that's quite an important part of this discussion, really, because, you know, AI and machine learning can be so daunting to try and implement, particularly as you were saying, there were so many different use cases, a plethora of opportunities around it. So it'd be really good to get your thoughts in terms of how do insurance businesses actually start the adoption process? How do they start thinking about their roadmap and what use cases are most important? And how easy really is the adoption process in terms of implementing AI and machine learning and getting that ball rolling? So Samir, I think I'll come to you first on this one, because I know you guys have done quite a lot of PIB group.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a really important point about adoption. You know, we really need to understand that, you know, you don't really need to use the modern technologies for the sake of using it and getting onto the bandwagon. Quite a few people think about that. Oh, actually, you know, let's start using AI ML somewhere, and they get lost. You know, if you really don't understand the actual use case, why you want to do it, you will fail. So therefore, I think going back to my original point that I raised, that, you know, look at your value chain, look at your end-to-end process, and see where you have got challenges, and that's where, you know, you would actually succeed. And that's how we actually done it. You know, we've looked at the end-to-end process, whether it is, as I said, the value chain about customer acquisition, or whether it's customer service, all through the back office where pricing, rating, and you look at that and then understand what are the existing current problems, and then start actually addressing it. And another mistake that people do with AI machine learning is that quite often they think that the solution to the problem is AI machine learning, especially when it comes to data analytics. But actually, you know what, a lot of times it is the standard advanced descriptive analytics could do the job. A standard analytics could do the job. You don't need to actually have a machine learning model to actually solve the problem. So that's another pitfall, that people think that, here's the machine learning model and it's going to solve the problem. Not necessary. Not absolutely not necessary. Another problem people really think, I think heavily used is the whole RPA technologies. People think that, we can use RPA to do certain sort of data interactions, whether it is capturing data, entering data. Before you get down to that, do explore the traditional method. Do speak to your partners, whether it's your customers or your insurers or your providers, to see if they've got APIs. It's amazing how many number of times that if you pick up a phone and speak to them about exchanging data through APIs or some sort of an integration layer, you don't need an RPA solution for that. Yeah. So you've got to be very pragmatic, and as Alex mentioned quite rightly, you understand the value of actually adopting a technology is really, really important. And that's what we've done in PIB. We looked at the value chain and all the examples that I gave before, whether it is going on to the contact center systems, which is multi-channel, including social media, doing speech analytics. Understand that by doing this, we can understand how our agents are serving our customers, understanding how our agent A is better than agent B, why is agent A is doing far more better. And all these technologies of speech analytics are embedded in the system itself. So when it comes to adoption, if you choose the right platform, that has got the capability, you already are on that journey of AI, using AI machine learning. And another really good example of AI ML getting commoditized is the identity proofing. It's being used everywhere nowadays, and we are using that. It's extremely useful. You cut out the human element of it completely. You get your passports and driving license verified against your selfie, and it's amazing what it can do. So those are the broader AI adoption techniques. What we've also done is, what you really need to understand is the analytics side of AI machine learning is also a journey. You really need to be on the right journey. You need to have the right building blocks in order to start doing machine learning modeling. As I mentioned, when you have a data analytics question to be answered, ask whether a traditional advanced analytics can do the job. Descriptive analytics can sometimes do the job, by doing some really clever techniques. And if the answer is no, because it is, in a technical term, undeterministic question, problem, then fine. Then you go into the machine learning journey. But from our experience, we've got set up. We've taken a lot of efforts in building the data lakes, the open source data lakes, making sure that the building blocks of collecting the data is there. Just for people who don't know PIB Group, we are fast expanding, and we are diversifying into different areas, and we are not UK only. So we are Europe based. We are acquiring a lot of companies. So the acquisition of data becomes really, really important. You have to make sure that you get the data from each of those operating companies into a central location in a meaningful way. And don't forget that when we're acquiring different companies, they all are at different level of maturity, different data formats, different systems. So if we don't have a building block of a data lake where it can handle multiple formats, then you're not going to get the next level of benefits of machine learning. So we spend a lot of time building that data lake, which is open source, supporting multiple formats, etc. So once you have that, you really need to have some building blocks about data quality as well, because the garbage in, garbage out also is absolutely true for machine learning as well. If your data is wrong, if it is tagged wrong, you are going to get your machine learning model predict completely different. It's not going to add value at all. So we had challenging times, but really useful. It's a journey that you have to go through. Get the data, clean it, augment it, then start writing your models. And writing models also, you've got two options. There are so many models out there in the market using tools which are already pre-built for you. I mean, there's no need to sort of go and re-engineer and reinvent the wheel if a model is going to do what you want. Like, for example, the standard things like churn. I'm sure that there's a model out there, somebody has written it in the retail industry to think about how to do it. So don't write it if the model exists. And if you do decide to write it, because yes, of course, there'll be scenarios where you have to have your specific scenario dealt with, then you need to have a team of data science. But more importantly, data sciences need to be supported well by the data engineers as well, because when you do machine learning modeling, it's often 60-70% is data engineering. The prep of data, the tagging of data is more important than just writing the model itself. So yeah, I mean, I think the final thought is do think about your problems and what you need to solve, and do think about the traditional methods first. You don't have to go to AI ML straight away. And if you implement the traditional methods, and if it falls short, then yes, go into AI ML. Do buy versus build. Don't start building it. If you can find a model or a solution, go and buy it, use it. Otherwise, then don't build it. Yeah.
That's really useful practical tips there. Thanks, Samir. Andy and Alex, I see you both nodding away over there, so I don't know who wants to kick off next. Andy, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, just a reflection, really, I guess, as the slightly less technically led person on the panel, probably. Isn't it fabulous to reflect on Alex and Samir, saying things like, don't start with machine learning and AI as the answer. Right, start with the business problem as the answer. So isn't that critical? And to hear Samir go back to quality of data, collection of data, valuing that data, making sure that end customers see the value in giving us that information. Feels like it's kind of anchored in the real world, and therefore to folk like me, kind of general management folk. That gets a real big tick for us. And then to hear Alex talk about, look, when you're talking about your first deployment, start with the deployment that's got the lowest complexity but the highest business value. So to hear those kind of things from the guys on the panel, I think is very important for us and important for an industry that is still sort of fledgling on its use of machine learning. My last reflection, I suppose it's a bit of a challenge, is when faced with the question on a first implementation of machine learning, either as a broker or as an insurer, is it buy versus build? I don't think it's either. I think it's both. Because if you buy it in, you are in real danger of saying it's nothing to do with this organization. Somebody else, a third party, is gonna deliver it for us, and that will fall into the biggest trap of kind of not owning the data, not owning the outputs, not turning the outputs into real life business solutions. And if you build it yourself, I just don't think we've got the competencies as an industry. So I don't think it is buy or build, it's both. And if you can get that hybrid right, then and couple it with the sentiment that you're hearing from Alex and Samir, which is, drive business value, start with low complexity implementations. Remember, machine learning isn't always the answer, and the collation of data in the first place is so critical. So, there you go, just almost a general management reflection on some of the fabulous inputs that we've had from Alex and Samir over the last 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, no, really useful roundup there, Andy. Thank you. Alex, was there anything you wanted to add on adoption?
Yeah, I think that I like to hear the kind of the AML not the right thing, because right, I mean, AML is part of the techniques in terms of data processing that you want to use to solve business problems. So you're right, you don't want to overcook it. Sometimes you don't need machine learning, and you need the right tool for the right job. So that's absolutely that's clear. I think that when you say about adoption and roadmap, I mean, my view is that it's still early stage in terms of adoption in the industry, because I don't see roadmaps for my clients. Let's be clear, there's no roadmap at the moment. They're testing things, some of them more than others, some of them going to production, others no. but there's no real roadmap. So, and we're trying to educate our customers for this, because it's really important. It's important how you not only look into what's going to deliver in the next 2 months, but get a strategy and more like a 12 months kind of a roadmap vision. I think it's important because that forces you to line up what you're trying to achieve with the company's business priorities. So early stage in terms of adoption, that's what I see. Now, in terms of adoption, one of the things that sometimes just slow down things is that machine learning is not traditional IT, right? We used to say data is the code. So you can't work like you used to work with implementing IT project, etc. You have to be agile, you have to work in a different style. And sometimes we're trying to apply those techniques and the client are not fully ready for this. So there's a speed element of that, and there's a kind of there's some change management about how you want to work to deliver this type of projects. And you can't work the same way you were working for implementing ERPs in the past. It's just completely different. So there's a change enabler component of that. Another important point that sometimes slows down the adoption is that data science and machine learning is not only about data science, it's all about data as well. So you need to line up, and I've heard Samir talk about data lake. It's really critical. If you want to productionize those solutions, you need a data lake foundation. So you need to have a machine learning strategy and roadmap that is synced up and lined up with your data lake foundation. Very often what happens is that we can see clients starting engaging in a data lake foundation initiative because they know that they've got lots of data in silos, completely scattered in different systems, etc. And they know for traditional, like just provide operational visibility, they need to have this data centralized and consumed in a better way for their end users. And they're in the data lake journey. And sometimes they don't have enough buy-in from the internal because they can't sell that. Internally say, I need, because it's a technical requirement, I need to build a data lake foundation. When we plug in machine learning and we start showing the art of the possible to them, then they have a stronger justification internally to say to the business, to their business leadership, guys, we need that foundation, because if you want those predictive insight that will drive value because you've seen the business case, then we need the data foundation in place. And that's why, for example, at Inawisdom, we're very famous about machine learning, but actually 70% of the work we do is helping clients implementing the data lake foundation, because that is the pillar for then productionizing machine learning solutions.
That's really interesting. So sort of building on that, then, if we say that sort of this data lake foundation is one of the key building blocks you need prior to sort of implementing AI and machine learning, are there any other sort of vital components that businesses really need to have in that foundation before they can really build up their models and reap the benefits? I mean, Alex, do you have any other views on that?
I think that, again, there's a question about the operating model and the strategy for the companies in terms of how much they want to upskill internally or want a partner to support in that journey. And again, there's no one good answer for that. It depends on every client, the size of the client, and how strategic they see data and machine learning part of their value proposition in the market. So what we do on our side is that we're trying to look, when we look into and start proving use cases, we want to look into, okay, if you want to move to production this, what's the operating model, how you want, so we anticipate all the kind of the requirements for the clients to be able to run those solutions and just anticipate what they want to retain internally and what needs to remain out, I would say, outsourced by a partner. And from there, we help our clients upskill themselves to be ready if they want to take over, for example. So there's different models, but I think the operating model for every client to understand how much internal resource do I want to have, how much I want to upskill my team. Inawisdom position is that if you start using machine learning, it's important that you have some understanding about how it works. Even though you're not fully specialized, we tend to avoid the black box effect. You start using and consume machine learning, but you don't have a clue about how it works. So we are very advocate about explaining at least how it works, even though we would be building and running those solutions for our clients. It's very important for us, for our clients, to understand how those models react, what's the rationale, what's the features that are fitting the model for them to understand the reasoning of those models. So that's an important one. Upskilling and getting a operating model strategy for our clients is important.
That's really useful. Andy, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess leaping firmly into the broker shoes here. sort of unashamedly. A couple of questions from those inputs. Firstly, we've talked about data, how we value our data. The first question I think for brokers is who owns your data? We as brokers are the closest to the customer. We've already talked about valuing that, getting customers to value that. But there's a critical part of this for a broker, which is all around claims data. And often that claims data doesn't find its way back to the broker in a good enough format from carriers. My big question for the broker distributors is, what's your contractual relationship with your carriers on that claims data? How much value are you putting getting that into your business, into your data lake, so that we can then start to use it with machine learning and AI? So there's your first fundamental question for brokers. And then the second one, I've reflected on this a few times in the press, is who's going to play the role of collating that data? So Samir at PIB is going to be sitting there saying, look, we're big enough. We are big enough now to be able to have a critical mass of the data to actually take some meaningful risk selection, pricing, account management decisions on the back of this. And he's probably got a point. With the big consolidators, they probably are getting to a point where they're big enough, and so their data lakes are big enough. But there are still 2,000 or 3,000 independently operating brokers who, it doesn't matter how big you are, how much you dominate your region, how much you dominate a certain sector, you're probably just not going to be big enough for the machine learning data, for the data that machine learning and AI needs to make some sensible use cases of that data. So who collects that data? And I've reflected, is it the broker management systems, Actuaris, Open, SSP and the like? Is it the networks? Clearly from my experience. Is it new entrants like Broker Insights and the like? Is it even a completely separate third party like the premium finance providers? But there's a real role there, I think, in the industry for the collation of that data from independent brokers, to educate those independent brokers on how they make best use out of machine learning and AI techniques and get even more value into their data. So a couple of messages for any of the people in the broking community on the call, on the webinar. One, make sure that you have a clear line of sight onto who owns your data, and make sure, particularly on claims, you're getting that into your business. And secondly, a view on how can you collate that data with like-minded organizations to make even better use of it. And I think they're two strategic data usage questions that the independent broker sector is facing.
No, really good. I'm going to come to you, Samir, next to get your sort of reactions really to Andy's comments. But first, I'd just like to remind the audience that if you have any questions for our panelists, do feel free to type it up in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll try and leave some time at the end to go through them. So yeah, don't forget that. So yeah, Samir, over to you to perhaps react to some of Andy's comments there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to add to what Andy said is, another thing that we, as a broking community, whether you're a small broker or not, that you've got to do is it's a change in mindset. You really think data as your asset. This is really important, guys, because sometimes people miss it. And if you don't consider data as a valuable asset, then by default, you don't follow your standard operating procedures. So what I mean by that is, even though you might have a broking platform like Actuaris or whatever, and as Andy said, you might have systems in place, but if you don't understand the value of capturing the right data, quite often that information gets missed. So an agent, a customer serving agent, might not input all the data that is required in the system. And if you don't have the data in the system, you will have gaps in the data. And if you've got gaps, that's where the data quality issue comes in. And if you have data quality, forget machine learning, even standard analytics will not work. It's again the garbage in, garbage out scenario. So this is the thing that we've experienced in PIB world as we were growing. Yes, we are big, but when we were small, exactly the same message to our guys who were not following the standard operating procedure. So what I recommend is go back to your business operations, make sure you've got a standard operating procedure, make sure your teams are using the system in the way it should be used, capture the data as much as you can. And if you can't capture the data because it's not in the system, go back to your vendors, go back to your IT systems, but make sure that the data is digitalized. Because if your data is sitting on somebody's handwritten notes in diaries, because it do happen, in a manual trade, sometimes the data is not always in the system. Then yeah, you are going to have a serious gap, even just doing the basic analytics. So yeah, I mean, it's a really important point that to sort of it's a shift in mindset that do consider data as a really valuable asset. You can do a lot of things, even if you're a small broker, but just doing a simple analytics can give you so much insight into what your customer wants and what your carrier is doing. Yeah, do pay a lot of attention on data quality, because if you don't have it, you are not going to fix any problems.
No, really interesting then. It's interesting what you were saying as well about that shift in mindset and having sort of change your perception in how we view data. So kind of linked to that then, is there anything that you guys think perhaps could hamper then the successful implementation or rollout of AI? So for example, if this mindset shift doesn't happen and people don't start valuing data in that way, is there anything that could prevent the success of AI or hamper it in any way? So, I mean, Andy, I can come to you first on this one.
Well, I think the most valuable use cases are derived from better data, better risk selection, better pricing decisions. However, the one thing that we've perhaps avoided a little bit today is the use of machine learning in some very standardized operational processes, and just taking the drudge out of that. From simple policy documentation issue, that kind of thing in the insurer's world, in a broker's world. So, we shouldn't underestimate some value that will create. But, for me, it all comes back to end customer, getting that data valued, getting the quality of that data right in the first place. What's the quote that, we spend a lot of time with machine learning, and we take the data and raise it to the nth degree and multiply it and kind of use it in really intricate ways. But actually what we need to realize is that data was initially collected by somebody with a pen and paper, and they wrote down what the heck they wanted to in the first place. So you just got to be careful that you've got the operational processes in place, that you've got a business culture that values that data from end customers. And if you got that in place in the first place, and I think Samir's reflected on it very strongly, and Alex, which is real credit to those sort of tech-led folk, then machine learning and AI can play a vital part in some of the fundamental risk selection, pricing, claims management issues that are at the heart of our industry. And so yeah, there's a real possibility of a feeling of sort of revolution on how we make those decisions in the industry, I think.
Great. And Alex, do you have anything to add?
I think that we could cover that topic for ages. To be honest, every time I'm hearing Andy and Samir speak, I've got all the ideas coming up in my mind. But no, I would say data ownership, absolutely. Of course, I mean that's the fuel of the engine. So right from the beginning, you need to understand what is the data that I can access, and can I process the data? So this PI consideration to take it, but that's kind of a day one question when you start that journey, obviously. And sometimes, and you want to start. I mean, our approach will be to get our clients think big. Think, what if I could do this? And for us to look into what is the data we've got, and then proving feasibility. Some of the steps will be feasible, others will require additional data, and then you've got a new question, which is, okay, what if I could get this additional information from an external partner? But it's kind of, so we're helping our customers maturing in that way. Now, I think that when we talk about fail and success, we also need to stress that fail is part of the process of machine learning. But if you fail, you need to fail fast. And when you start looking into a use case, our approach is to look into it and test feasibility and very quickly in the process. What happens very often is that you start with a question from the business. I'd like to get this thing. And then within 1 week, our approach will be to nail down that question, to exactly understand the exam question. What we do like a data exploration work, it's kind of 1 week, to look if this has legs, if we've got the right data here, if the data looks qualitative enough, we've got the right volume of data. And sometimes you can say, there's no problem to, at the end of week 1, to say, guys, this is not possible, but actually we can answer a slightly different question that maybe has still value for you guys. So it's a very iterative approach. But what would be for us, what would be a nightmare would be to start a journey with 1 use case and 3 months later come to the customer and say, not possible. That would be a fail. But at the end of week 1 saying, you're missing some data to answer that particular question, that's not fail. That's part of the process. And we need to acknowledge that. It's working and thinking differently. That's really important. Now, that's why the success is more longer term success. That's for me, it's really about driving adoption and making sure that you've got the right business sponsors lined up to those initiatives. Because again, as said, Andy, we might be tech-led, but we are very business case-led as well. If we don't have business case, we don't move forward. So if we don't have involvement from the business in those initiatives, we step back because it just doesn't make sense. So that's a key pillar for adoption. Be successful, get the sponsorship from the business, and once you've implemented your solution or your model, be in a position to monitor the value alongside. Post go live, you want to show and demonstrate internally to your business that this is driving value as you were expecting. That's really important. There's a cycle post implementation that is really important that sometimes customers forget about, but that's really important.
No, definitely. Thank you. Samir, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just an important point going back to what Andy said in the beginning. We should not lose the sight that we are doing all of this for the customer. Yeah, so if you take the customer as the core here, and if you understand the end-to-end journey, then we've got multiple stakeholders, isn't it, in order to serve a customer. So you've got, PIB is a retail as well as wholesale. We have MGA as well. So we are serving the end customer in retail world as well as the individual brokers as well. So it's interesting that if you think how many stakeholders are involved in that life cycle, if you can go from customer to broker to an MGA to a carrier. So there are so many stakeholders involved. And one of the challenges that you can have with any technology, even if it is AI or machine learning, it's not really going to solve your problem, is that if you don't collaborate with each other. If you don't collaborate, then all the solutions that you're going to build are going to be very isolated. PIB can spend millions of pounds on build an excellent machine learning model to do some stuff. But if it is very isolated and if it doesn't get the support and data from the carriers as well as from the brokers in the MGA world, as well as from the customers, then it's not going to work. Yeah, so therefore, what we do find a challenge in our industry, if you're a small broker especially, is the lack of collaboration. You really need to collaborate with the carriers in terms of getting the data the way you want it in a standard format or in the standard way, in a consistent manner. And if you're an MGA, you have a problem where you may not get the data what you want from the other smaller brokers. So machine learning is great, but if you don't collaborate, it's not going to add value, unfortunately. And also, you need to understand that you really need to plug in your AI machine learning solutions within your end-to-end business process journey, because if you don't do that, then it will become this satellite standalone application that nobody will use it. So you make sure that you plug your solution within your end-to-end process so that it becomes part of your customer serving journey. Collaboration, I think for me, the most important point.
No, definitely. I'm just going to turn to some questions now from the audience that have come in. So we've had a couple with more of a broker focus. I'll probably come to you, Samir, on this one. We've got one broker in the audience who is asking about finding the best places to collect data, as they've found it difficult from their own experience, and sort of which companies are providing these data, the sort of the best options for brokers. And again, another audience member has asked about who can collate the data for smaller brokers, and in terms of adoption of the outputs of AI from brokers. So sort of a few kind of nuggets there in terms of the consistent adoption of AI into processes from operational teams as well, and how to approach it. So a few kind of broker-led questions there. So I'll come to you first, Samir.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to look at which question.
Oh yeah, you can see them as well, can't you? Yeah, the last two are on our list. So yeah, a couple there. And equally, Andy or Alex, if there's any pointers you want to answer on those as well, do chip in.
Hey, Katie, yeah, Andy here. So for a broker, I think there is a couple of emerging questions. First one is, are we being demanding enough of the broker management systems, of Actuaries, of Open, of SSP, of Applied, of CDL? Because they have an advantage position here with us. Are we being demanding enough of them in terms of making it easier for us to collect data, and actually making it easy for us to apply some of the machine learning techniques? That would be the first point. And then the second point on what about collating? So if I'm a small broker, how do I go about getting my data into a bigger data pool and then actually extract some data from it? I think that's an outstanding question for us as an industry and for the small brokers. I've already talked about some of the options. I think the broker management systems themselves, the networks, new emerging players like Broker Insights, premium finance providers, and the like, and of course the consolidators themselves, are possibilities here. For a small broker, I think it's, who do you trust? Who do you trust with that data? Who do you trust to actually derive value for your own business, for your own P&L to do just that? And I think they're the questions that we should be posing. But the first one I think is really, really important for us, which is, are we being demanding enough of the broker management systems, in terms of data collection and the use of that data?
That's great. Thank you, Andy. Yeah. Samir, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and this is right. I mean, essentially, the core to this is to make sure that, we have got the right data from the stakeholders that we depend on, whether it's a carrier or whether it's a broker or whether it's a third-party providers. We need to actually make sure, this is where my previous point in collaboration is exactly that we need to make sure that we need to collaborate and get the right data, because at the end of the day, we have a common goal of serving the customer. If we don't collaborate, then we're not going to achieve that. So another important point is that you get the data and then start digitalizing the data. That is the most important bit. As per my previous point, even if you're not using a broker management system like Actuaries or whatever, as long as you digitize it, make it into a structured format, put it into, so even if it's a spreadsheet, it's fine, but make sure that it's consistent, it's clean, because you can derive a lot of value of that data if it is structured. If it is unstructured and it is incomplete and the value is not good, then you're going to struggle to do it yourself, or even other players in the end-to-end journey, even if it is MGAs, or even the insurers can't help if you don't capture all the data. So do put a lot of emphasis on the quality of data. Don't have to have big systems, don't have to spend a lot of money on it. Just make sure that it is structured and clean, even if you are using a spreadsheet. And then there are, as I said in a previous point that I raised, that there are, if you ever want to go into a machine learning journey or advanced analytics journey, there are tools out in the market that can basically suck in the data from your structured spreadsheet and can help you do some nice insights, whether it's machine learning or standard analytics, it can happen. But nothing will work if you don't digitalize it. So yeah, that's the important point I would highlight again.
Great, thank you. I've got another question from Gary, which I'd like to throw open to Alex and Samir in particular. So Gary's asking about that better and value are quite generic terms. So he'd like to know if you guys have got any specific case studies where a quantified business benefit has been realized from a productionalized AI or machine learning deployment, and how long did this take?
I think I take this one. So again, we talked about a lot about unstructured data, document processing, intelligent document processing. So for example, we've implemented a solution for a client where we have helped them implementing an IDP solutions, which aims at collecting information received by brokers. So it's a carrier, the client is a carrier, and they're receiving the documents from the brokers. All the underwriters were kind of processing those documents manually, reading the documents, extracting information manually, and then moving into kind of pricing the risk. This was taking ages and didn't give any visibility for the management in terms of what coming in, what is not underwritten by underwriters, and there's a productivity challenge here. So we've implemented a solution within 5 months, and that aim at massively improve the expense ratio. So basically, interestingly, you think about IDP and document processing about cost savings, but the reality is that you want your underwriters to have more time to deliver high value activities, right? You don't want them to spend 70% of their time reading manually documents. So you want probably most likely to keep the same underwriting workforce, but underwriting better and more. So there's a growth opportunity here. And but yeah, I think you can have different benefits for this type of solution. In that case, you improve your expense ratio because you're more efficient in writing risk. You write better risk because you've got less human errors when extracting this information. You are improving also growth because you're more responsive to brokers. So when a broker comes to you for quotes, you can come back quicker to the broker. So you probably would have lost some opportunities because you're not coming fast enough to the broker. The pace and the speed for coming back to brokers is important, sometimes even more important than the premium itself. And so yeah, there's lots of different benefits out of that, but that's an example. There are other use cases, but this one is an example where there's a very strong business case that supported that journey for the client. And keep in mind that IDP was a start point, as Samir said. When you start processing unstructured data, you almost become a market data provider. You're getting new data accessible internally, and from there you can look into new use case and new insights. Because what we see on our side when we have IDP conversation with our clients is that when they see the potential of extracting this information from those documents, and it could be a pre-bind process, but then it could be a claim process as well. Then they say, okay, once they see that, then we've got a business conversation, and it's not tech conversation. Then you have the business saying, okay, if I get this information automatically, now what if I could do this or that? And then you start building a roadmap, which goes beyond data processing, document processing. It goes beyond that. And that's what is really interesting with as an example, it's not the only route, but starting the journey with IDP.
Great, thank you. Samir, do you have any examples you can share quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's when we talk about AI machine learning, we've got to be careful because it's such a broad terminology, isn't it? I mean, there are, as we mentioned in the webinar so far, is that it's you've got technologies that are there, the tools are there. You don't have to build anything. You just sort of use those terms, do those tools. They are AI machine learning based anyway. For example, as Alex mentioned, IDP. There's another one which is identity verification tool. So if you've got a case where you have to verify a customer's identity from a KYC point of view, onboarding point of view, there's immediate value in getting that because these technologies are far more accurate and superior than a human eye that can detect whether it's a document is genuine or not and whether it can match against that. So there is a clear value in some of the tools out there. If you're really talking about building machine learning models, which is a subsection of AI machine learning, I mean, it is a long journey. I must say that we're going through that, and you've, as I spoke before, in order to realize the value of that, you need to go through various steps, and you need to have the building blocks. You build the models, and then you need to have the right feedback of the models back into the business to realize the value. So if you're thinking about machine learning models, yes, it is not an easy method of actually realizing the values. You will eventually get there, but there's an iteration and a feedback loop that you have to go through. So it really depends on, as I said, AI and machine learning is so broad that quite often people only think about it as writing your own models, but that's really, really low level, and it's only subsection of it. But if you do the other bits, then you can really immediately get the value out of it.
Just get there was like a timeline question about this, just to give some benchmark ideas, because we're doing that day in, day out at Inawisdom. What we tend to do on machine learning solutions is proving feasibility within 4 to 5 weeks max. So that's kind of what we call a discovery approach, where you want to prove feasibility with the data of our clients, just make sure this is workable, and you provide visibility of what's the TCO for building that solution in production. And then for the moving to production, the aim for us is to move to production between 10 weeks to 4 or 5 months maximum. So again, the speed is key in machine learning. You have to be able to bring this solution in front of the business, so going live as quickly as possible. So the average pace for us is 3 months to reach production and put that in front of the client, even though then you can have continuous improvements and fine-tuning the end-to-end integration, etc. But you want to go fast. Speed is key.
Lovely, thank you so much. I'm afraid we've come to the end of our session there. So thank you so much to Andy, Samir and Alex for your insights and sharing them with us today. It's been absolutely fascinating, and we really appreciate you being here to discuss this topic with us. So thank you so much. And a big thank you as well to all our online attendees. I hope you got plenty from the webinar and got lots of ideas to think about now. There was a couple of questions we didn't get round to, but obviously we'll try and answer those offline and share the responses with you so you have them. But yeah, thank you again everyone for attending, and hopefully see you at the next webinar.